Hello, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the inspiration behind Nina's 99 Luftballons. My name is Cody, and we're going to talk to you today all about a new variation on Cryptozoic's DC Comics deck-building games. I'm, of course, talking about DC Comics deck-building games, Batman vs. Joker, Rivals!
Looking at the ladies in and they be looking at me. Ain't causing no fuss. Wherever they be ladies, brother, that's where I gotta be. Other men in my dust. Women that happen to be my territory.
This new iteration of the DC Comics deck building game is different from the previous games in the series. The core game, the DC Comics deck building game, Heroes Unite, and Forever Evil. What makes the DC Comics deck building game Rivals, Batman vs. Joker, from here on out referred to simply as Rivals, different from its predecessors is that this game is simply a two-player game. Where the previous games were 2 to 5 players, this is strictly speaking a two-player game. And one of the players is going to take on the role of Batman, arguably the most iconic superhero ever, and the other one will take on the role of his arch-nemesis, the Joker. Now, in the other DC comic deck-building games, you, of course, have a supervillain or a superhero that all the players are trying to take down with their cards. This one's a little bit different. Both Batman and the Joker each have 3 kind of large cards. These large cards give them special abilities, and they also have kind of higher point values. Now, what you're going to do is, just like in the DC Comics deck-building game, you get a hand of starter cards. The vulnerability cards, of course, do nothing for you. They just take up space in your hand, while the punch cards give you 1 power, +1 power. And again, power is the currency of the game, because power is what is going to allow you to attack the other cards and put them into your deck. They'll come up again into your hand. So you add up your power of your hand, you buy a card from the lineup. Now, these can be various cards that represent either villains or equipment or superheroes or superpowers, all sorts of things. Now, also, you have the option of buying a kit card, which is worth 2 power, only costs you 3 points throughout the game. Now, of course, throughout this game, you're using the cards to buy more cards. You're putting all the cards you used in your turn and those new cards in a discard pile. You're drawing 5 new cards from your deck, and you're constantly cycling through. Whenever you need to draw a card and you don't have a deck there, you just got your discard pile, you reshuffle the discard pile, that's your new draw deck. So you're constantly making, of course, a better deck, just like in most deck builder games. One of the things, of course, that you can do is attack other players, usually with a villain card. That attack ability can do a lot of sort of funky things, force players to discard other cards, may even force them to gain a weakness. And a weakness is bad because it's like a vulnerability, but instead just of not doing anything for you, they actually take away points from you at the end of the game. Now, there's one major difference between Rivals and its predecessor DC games, and that is the mechanic of the Confrontation. Essentially, what's going to happen is at the beginning of your turn, if you think you've got the power to take down one of your Rivals' big cards, you can declare a confrontation. Essentially say, I'm going to go after that card. Now, the cards have point values of 9, 12, and 15, which are pretty expensive cards, so you want to make sure if you don't have the cards you need, maybe you've got draw cards or other things that will give you more power and more cards to draw from as the round goes on, so that you can try to take out one of those more powerful cards. But you have to declare a confrontation, which means you cannot spend any of your power on any cards from the lineup that round. You must simply spend it on trying to attack your villain's big card. Now, your enemy, the person who you're attacking, he may have a block ability. One of his cards may have block. That could suddenly raise the currency value of his card he's trying to protect. It may do some other things. You may have abilities on a confrontation that give you more power in order to take it out. But if you take that card, that ability then on that card is lost to your enemy, and you put that kind of in your victory pile. The big cards, of course, are worth a lot of victory points. The smaller cards are worth varying amounts of victory points throughout the game, and you're going to keep going. Now, if at any time someone is successful in capturing all 3 of his enemy's cards, he immediately wins the game. That is it. You capture that third 15-point card, you win. Now, otherwise, as soon as you run out of cards from the main deck, those are the cards that go in the lineup, as soon as there's no more cards you can draw, the game ends. You look at all of the cards you've captured, the big cards you've captured from your enemy, you look at all the cards in your deck, and look what the point values are. You subtract point values from weakness cards. Whoever has the most points wins the Rivals DC comic game. So, I have to tell you, I'm a big fan of the DC Comics deck building game and the Cerberus engine that's a part of it. This, of course, has been adapted to the Lord of the Rings games, as well as several other games from Cryptozoic Entertainment. Now, Rivals is fully compatible with the other DC games. So you could mix the cards up, and the cards from the set all say Rivals on it, so you'll always know which cards go where. There's only, I think, just round about 100 cards in this set, so there's not too many cards. It's designed for a shorter, lighter, faster play. And that is really what this game delivers. This is a quick game. The DC Comics game, especially if you're playing with 4 or 5 people, it can slow down. You get some people with analysis paralysis, and they're looking, and they're making their combinations, and they're looking. And this one, it's boom, 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 because as soon as your turn is over and somebody else is going, you are trying to figure out what you're going to do on your next turn, and as soon as it's your turn, you kind of know what to do. It's a much faster, much more streamlined game in that sense, and that is a real strength of Rivals. The confrontations themselves are also a lot of fun. It's kind of a new twist where you're attacking somebody directly, and you can kind of do that in the other games a little bit with some of your attack cards. But what's cool about this is you feel like they're really going at each other. One of the big complaints about the DC Comics deck building game is that it's not a terribly thematic game, and that is the problem. Now, we reviewed the DC Comics deck building game in episode 5 of our first season here on The Discriminating Gamer. We talked about this thematic problem. We mentioned the Marvel game, how that is, of course, more thematic, but we also mentioned how we really liked the fact that the DC Comics game is a game you can take anywhere. You can go to a restaurant, you can play it. It's super easy to set up, super easy to play, and we really like that. Well, all those things we loved about the DC Comics deck building game, in that sense, are even more abundant in Rivals, because you can pick these things up and you play it anywhere. It's much easier. Great 2-player game. Now, here is the problem, though, with Rivals. While the cards are fun, you can build good combinations, it is quick, why not just buy the base game, or one of the other base games? The original, or Heroes United, or Forever Evil. Why don't you just buy one of those? Because that way, you can not only play the 2-player game, but if the more people want to join you, you can do that. I don't know that the confrontation mechanic, which is the kind of the chief departure from the original games, if that's enough to make this a game on its own. Now, the game frequently says this is Rivals 1, so we know more Rivals decks are coming, and maybe there'll be ways to integrate them. Who knows? But it's just kind of silly to say, well, I can spend the money to buy the 2-player game, or I can spend a little bit more to buy a game that I can play with 2 players, or I can play with 5. So in that sense, I don't know that this game is necessary. Now, it's a fun game. Do not get me wrong. I really enjoy playing this game. I just don't know, when you're weighing it against the advantages of having the core deck, if it holds up. I think maybe this game is being marketed more than anything to completists and people that just like to have all the sets, and to people who maybe like that idea of having the option of doing this kind of confrontation 2-player mechanic. But for just somebody kind of new to this game, I have to say, why don't you pick up the base game, or one of the base games? Because I think they are superior because they give you more options. So the recommendation for the discriminating gamer for the DC Comics deck building game Rivals, Batman vs. Joker, is try it before you buy it. You may like it. You probably will like it. I do, certainly. But, why not get a base game? Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment here on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. And, confession time, when I was in the first grade, I told the other students that Batman was my dad. I was wrong, and I'm sorry.
Somebody help! meet again. And I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
Better get back, Sackman, or this cowardly commentator will pay the ultimate price! $5!